up an item or two to 5A, the draft of the proposed 2017 budget. Mr. Stephen Bloom is here to run us through the work that he's done so far and help us decide on some dates to go through the budget in detail, the general 01, the enterprise 400, and then the capital budgets. Am I correct, sir?
Yes.
Would you please proceed?
Stephen Bloom, Severn Trent. What you have in front of you in the agenda, starting on page 33, which is just the memo, is a very preliminary, top-level budget that we put together just to kind of kick off the process. This does not include any of the committees, comments, or numbers just yet. It's very top level. I went through it and just said, okay, if all the information I have is what I have right now, how would I put together a full budget? And that's what you have. I did include some additional things that is worth mentioning when we talk about the general fund. But for the, with the exception of the general fund, it's basically a status quo budget, looking at where your current spending is, the current projects that I was aware of at the time, where your current revenue is, and I crafted a top-level first draft budget based on that information. Now, the general fund is a little bit different in that what I tried to do was to give you a budget that would include how things could look, and again, potentially look, with the state revolving loan included in it. So the general fund right now does have principal and interest payments in it. I wouldn't expect, certainly in 17, for you to have the full amount, but I wanted to show you what it would look like either down the line if the board does decide to use that loan, and how that would need to be crafted in terms of setting up the budget. So what I included in here was the principal and interest payments for, it's a $5 million base loan. It would assume, again, this assumes you get the full amount of money up front and you're already paying principal and interest payments by next year, which would really never happen. However, in talking with some of the folks at the State Revolving Loan Program, what they kept asking me over and over again is, you need to be able to show where you're going to be able to pay this money from. Meaning, show me point to a line in a budget that says, okay, I can cover this loan. And by cover this loan, I mean cover the principal and interest, plus they have a coverage amount above and beyond that they want to see. So I built this budget based on that philosophy. Now, the loan amount might change, the interest might change, any number of things will and can change based on how the program and how the loan is set up. But I wanted to give you kind of a top-level perspective on what it would do to the general fund. I also included in here, I did not back out 100% of the transfer to the fixed asset reserve for future capital projects. So if you look at the bottom of page 39, is really where you see these two amounts. Right there, okay. So there you can see the debt service payments, and then right the very second, right above total other fees and charges, I left the transfer to fixed asset reserve in there. It's $150,000. Obviously, that was just something I put in there right now as a placeholder. That's a discussion that the board would certainly have to have. The idea being that you certainly wouldn't want to just abandon the rest of your capital projects, even with the state revolving loan, that at some point you would want to have some money in there. And I wanted to kind of be able to show you, with all of this stuff in this budget, what does it do to your assessments. And that's kind of part of why I did this. So really, again, this is draft budget. This is a what-if type budget. Moving forward from here, it'll be all about getting feedback from staff, from the committees, and kind of working forward and putting the budget together.
Thank you, Steve. Are you ready to take a few questions?
Oh,
from
sure.
Board members? Please.
So the income to offset is strictly taxes, not from any part of 004. Is that true?
004, the separate fund, you mean?
Enterprise fund.
Oh.
002.
No, it's completely separate.
So even, all right, so having a rate study would have absolutely no bearing on this. So we're looking at taxing people additionally.
This would come from, yes, this would come from your special assessments.
Are you finished for now?
Yes, sir.
Pam? Margaret?
Do you have an idea of how you wanted to structure the workshops, or when you wanted to schedule those? Do you want us to work a little bit on this a little bit at every meeting between now and June 2nd? I guess that's really
Well, yeah,
two
let me,
meetings in May.
right, let me give you kind of the roadmap here in terms of what you guys need. And then I do believe last year it worked well doing a little bit each time. Trying to do them all in one meeting is probably too much. But in terms of what you need to do for the roadmap, on June 2nd, and that's kind of ties into the June 15th deadline, what we want to have is a top level budget, meaning here's my high water marks. I'm not going to assess more than this, and it's not just the general fund, it would be for Pelican Preserve, all the other general funds associated with it. We want to know what's your top level number. We want to have at least at that point a budget that we can provide to the county, and then will be used later on, for advertisements and things like that.
But then you need to give us the numbers that we need to be able to meet.
Sure, absolutely. I'm just saying that June 2nd is that meeting.
Okay.
So between now and then, at the very least, May 5th, May 19th, I believe, are your meeting dates. We want to, at least in those two meetings, accomplish making sure that you're comfortable with where the general fund is going to look, the framework of it. Meaning we know where our high watermark is going to be. So you can select either one of those meetings or both, depending upon how much you want to go through it. But that's really what you need to accomplish in that time frame. After that, you have between June 2nd and June 18th, if you want to, keep going on, and you can look at your enterprise fund more, because coming into the August 18th meeting, we can still make changes in the funds. Again, we can't go high, can't go anywhere up in our assessments because we'll already have advertised for it. But we can come down, we can talk about different programs, adding, subtracting things, and we have all the time in between there. It's not a ton of time, but we have all the time in the meetings between June 2nd and August 18th for everybody to be comfortable that when they come into the August 18th meeting, that what they're adopting, everybody has had the opportunity to discuss, go back and forth, and that everybody is prepared at that point to adopt it.
Does that mean then that we're gonna be looking at the general fund on May the 5th and the general fund capital account on May 19th?
That's fine. You do not have to do it that way because your capital fund is not funded through your assessments. It's funded through the amount you put into it. So you don't really have to look at it at that time, but it certainly would be a good opportunity. And to me, I'm okay with that as long as staff is, because the capital projects are really more what staff has to put together,
Sure.
a lot more work. So I really want to make sure they're comfortable with that
Yeah.
date.
So we're gonna start even including capital projects when?
May 19th.
Not until the 19th?
Well, we're planning on doing the general fund operation on the 5th and then the general fund capital on the 19th.
You good with?
I'm good with that. Again, that was part of the reason why I wanted to craft an entire budget for you, because now really it puts more of the pressure now on staff. So that's where my concern more at this point is staff, because staff and the committees have to put in their feedback on changes.
Right.
So that really where I want to make sure.
So that's why I wanted to try to get it moving as quickly as possible to allow enough time for the input after, and then to be able to make modifications.
Okay. April
If-
says they'll be ready. April said they'll be ready for the 19th.
May.
Yeah.
If we do the general fund operating on May the 5th and the general fund capital on the 19th, then we ought to be able to be ready to adopt the high level budget on June the 6th.
June
Excuse me,
2nd.
June the 2nd.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Then we can take a time to work on the enterprise fund and da-da-da-da.
And the enterprise capital.
Uh,
And still, again, it doesn't close the door on the general fund, because a lot of times what we did last year is if there were any lingering questions on any of the prior discussions at the beginning, we had a quick couple minutes to hash those out. So obviously, we won't close the door on the general fund on those subsequent meetings.
But we have to adopt the high-level general fund by June 2nd.
Yes.
And then when are we going to, or are we gonna talk about a rate study for the enterprise
For
fund?
the enterprise fund?
Yeah. Yeah, because that's not just a every year program, that's something that we, it's a,
No, I think when we talk about the enterprise fund,
yeah,
it'll be a good opportunity to have that discussion, because
Okay.
we can take a look at the trend.
so you agree,
I'm okay. Yes, I'm agree.
okay?
Ladies, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Steve. If you have anything else for us at this?
No, I'm good.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, back to,
Fire
number
impact
5,
fees.
our discussion agenda item, what's that? I'm sorry.
Fire impact fees.
Fire impact fees. 5C is to consider modification of the discount for the sale of the fire impact fee credits. This is an item where the city of Fort Myers granted the CDD $1,500,000 worth of fire impact fee credits, which we can sell to developers to offset the credits that they have to give to the city of Fort Myers. This was granted to the city of Fort Myers in return for the fire station that's on the Tree Line Boulevard. And all these fire credit income go into the Pelican Preserve Fund. I was just talking to Phil Macy at our recess. The Pelican Preserve Advisory Committee has not seen any of this documentation that is in our agenda, and he and I would like to postpone this item until the Pelican Reserve Advisory Committee has been able to study it in detail and then bring it back to us from them. Is that satisfactory with you?
Yes, and I was unaware that it was a special revenue to Pelican Preserve. So that's my fault. I was unaware of that, so I would have copied them on that had I known.
Well, that's why we're all here together, working on things.
But giving them the opportunity to review it, I also have Pat Hayes here this evening. He's the realtor
Oh,
agent
Pat's here.
yes, that's been working on this. And so, if possible, could we get his input tonight, or is it necessary to have him back?
Would you please invite him to the podium at this time?
Pat, okay. He was just gonna explain some of the market issues, what's going on, and why we're asking for some additional latitude in the agreement to get these sold. And there was also, some additional information that he provided to support this document as well. Pat?
Look, for the record, I'm Pat Hayes. I'm doing your impact fee credit sales for your fire impact fees. And I've been working in that impact fee niche in the real estate market since the 1990s when the ordinance was adopted here in Lee County. Sold a lot of road impact fees for the district. Matter of fact, in the 90s, they're road impact fees. And the fire impact fees are a little unique because it's such a small amount that is assessed for the impact fees. Each single family is $321. Each multifamily is $241. So in order to sell these, I've gone out where the volume is in the sales, is not in the commercial sales in the city of Fort Myers, it's in the residential sales. And the builders right now, there's quite a few active projects going on today. I've approached all of them multiple times. So far, I've got D.R. Horton, Neal Communities, Lennar from time to time buying credits for their projects. I've had resistance from the two strongest volume people in the city right now, which is GL Homes and Pulte. And the reason why basically is the discount, $64 savings per unit, which they haven't felt it was worthy enough to run through their accounting for that small a savings. So I've kept trying and kept pushing. I am selling them road and school credits at this time in the city. But they've just passed on the fire, saying, look, it's just not worth running it through our accounting. Speaking with Richard Arkin from GL Homes over in Marina Bay, they've really gone hot in there. They're building a lot of units. And I sell the school credits for GL Homes right now, as well as selling them road credits. So they own school credits now. WCI also owns fire credits right now, or I'd be selling them the fire credits. They have fire credits. But in working with them, I asked him here what would make it worth your while to buy fire credits, because what's going to happen at the end of the day is the worst thing that can happen for the district is they end up with $500,000 or $1 million that just vanish in 9 years when these things expire. 9 years is a long time, but $1.5 million is a lot of fire credits. And as well as the amount that's on a balance, the city of Fort Myers gives a CPI adjustment to this account every year. So actually these credits, whatever the balance is, they are worth about 22% more than they say. That CPI adjustment is calculated when the credits are used. So what we do when we sell credits here, if I'm selling $10,000 worth of credits, we just subtract the CPI adjustment off of it, and that's the amount that goes on the transfer form. And so everything's reduced by 20-some%. So what I'm saying is right now, in March, GL came to me and said, look, I've got 150 houses I'll buy fire credits for right now at 40% discount. Well, that's $45,000. That's a lot of fire credits. As we speak now, they're pulling permits every day, so that 150 houses is now going down to 100 and wherever it is today. So the longer we wait for them, they'll be next year before we're going back around. They were going to buy the rest of the year. They probably got 500-600 units left in Marina Bay. So what I'm trying to do now is kick this in so we can move these credits. Given the market the way it is now, the real estate market, residential market's very strong right now and seems to be staying strong. And the land is getting less and less to put the residential units on, especially in the city. There is a few projects on the books, residential projects that will take some credits, up to say 60 or 70,000. That's a huge sale. That's 200, 150, 200, 300 units. So what I'm asking is, can we move some of these credits? I don't have to adjust the commercial discount. The commercial discount can stay at 20% right now, and that's not going to affect, the commercial and industrial end of it. What it affects is the volume residential guys, and that's where most of the business is going to be. So, what I'm asking is if we can just try to, when we're trying to move these, time is kind of the essence for us, not only 9 years. Now, the other thing I was going to add was there's a possibility. We have done this with roads and we've done it with schools that at the end of 9 years, you can get an extension. But fire is a little bit different than roads and schools as far as how the county, because the districts are all different. Another possibility when you get to 9 years to 2025, prior, say, even now, that we look into some, and I'll say this, find an attorney that can look into the possibility of moving some of the credits out of the city of Fort Myers district into the county Zone 53 district, which would be east of 75, which would encompass some of the county. And if I could start selling them out of the city limits into the county, that would quadruple our sales as far as being able to sell the different projects, not just in the city. But I don't know how, in the roads, I go to DOT with that, and they calculate it, say, okay, so much, do a traffic study, figure out what they can allocate. With schools, if it's in a certain zone, they'll do the same thing with fire. I don't know how that works, because we've never done it with fire. And that's why I say in order to take half of the credits and move them into if I could use them in Lehigh, or if I could anywhere else down around Gulf Coast Town Center, we'd be out of credits. So what worries me now with the amount I'm selling is just the fact that you get down the road and you're gonna have a balance left in there, and it's gonna expire.
Would you stand for some questions from the board?
Oh,
members?
I appreciate them, yes, yes.
Do you have a question, Pam? Gary? Gary, you have the honor.
So, I'm sorry, your first name was,
It's
sir?
Pat.
Pat?
Yes, sir.
What are we offering now, Pat? What's
We're offering a 20% discount across the board. With that in mind, the CPI adjustment just about makes up for the discount, so it's pretty much close to face when we sell credits. What I would ask for would be a 40% discount to the residential volume builders and keep the 20% discount for all commercial users. We just did a small little commercial building, J.J. Taylor Distribution Center. The average is $5,000 or $6,000 for commercial industrial in the city for fire. So even when you see a big project, you know, the J.J. Taylor, pretty large building there,
Okay.
distribution center, $5,600, $6,000 I think, $6,500 was what it was, and I think our sale was $5,000. So commercial and industrial is going to be kind of just a non-factor. I think the biggest thing, the biggest target market out there to sell volume and get these credits out are Pulte, Lennar, D.R. Horton, and on a quarterly basis, annual basis, where they'll buy these credits.
So you're talking about Marina Bay?
Marina
GL,
Bay, yes,
yeah,
sir,
right.
Marina Bay.
I'm in the business.
Yes, sir.
All right, so, what's the takedown between now and the end of the year at
Marina Bay right now, it was in March 16th when I talked to Richard Arkin, 156 units he was willing to buy.
Okay.
Now.
At
the-
40.
At 40%. Now, at the rate they're going, every week they're pulling 6 or 8 units a week. So as we wait to the next board meeting, there's another 20 units or so. And it's just, you know, Pulte was another big user of these, and if I could get to them, and if it was $100 or so a house, I could.
Which unit, which tract are we talking about with Pulte?
Well, the tree line tracks over there, you know, on what they're doing there, as well. You know, WCI is doing great too, but they already have fire credits.
I understand. It used to be with them.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that we negotiate, if they're gonna do a takedown of 150, cause new construction, that's kind of my baby. If they're gonna take down, let's say, just using round numbers, 150 units. If on the other hand, we said to them, the total package that GL Homes is gonna build, and they own that entire tract of land, so they're gonna build everything and they know exactly what they've got. Can't we, and I'm looking for your professional advice, offer them a rate for the 150 and a different rate for the
400.
entirety?
Yes, sir. And that it's possible. And, you know, how they work internally, what they like to do is, you know, buy no more than a year
I know
out
what they
usually.
like to
Yeah,
do.
yeah, well, one at a time if I would
Of
drive
course they
over
do.
there.
Sure.
But, you know, they're a little different GL
I
as far
understand.
as what they'll do. And very few, like the D.R. Hortons are not buying more than what they, every
Yeah.
3 months. Lennar's the same way.
Really?
Pulte's pretty much the same way, yeah, and Lennar, I mean, I have to start with Darren McMurray and go to the
We know
Steve,
Darren.
and then go down to, finally, the permit person, when she sees me come in, she hides. Because it's just another job for her to do.
Of course.
You know, for no extra pay.
I understand.
So, yeah, the president says buy them, and the permit coordinator says don't buy them. So, you know, that's kind of my own fight. But, you know, just trying to move these, you know, the only options I see at the rate we're going is to either see a bunch of these expire or try to get them moved to where we can get them in a zone, which I've never done fire. And
Okay.
dealing with the districts, I don't even know if it's doable. And then finally would be to just, you know, to move them out as best we can, for whatever we can move them out at. I mean, if somebody came in right now for the whole chunk at 50 cents on a dollar, I'd almost tell you, look, let's do it.
Hey, so what I'm trying to narrow this down to, and not trying to take up
Sure.
the
Yeah,
other
I'm-
people,
I
but
don't-
if we went back to them with an offer of 35% for 150,
35% discount?
yeah, okay. We're at 20, they're talking about 40, we wanna be expressive. So we go back to them with 35 for 150. Now granted, they're gonna say 106 and I'm gonna say 150. And we'll go to that. By the way, if you wanna take an additional 100, 200, whatever that number is, take the whole package for 42, 44, 45. Can you pull that off?
Yes, I could, and, when I say yes, I could, I can try to pull that off. What I would like to do, though, is at least have the blessing of the board to be able to go and do that, and, you know, with everyone, not just with GL, but with Pulte as well.
I'm not just talking.
Okay, so, you know, I have a little bit of leash where I can go sell these.
Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, well, that.
You okay with
kind of
this?
my thinking,
It's
yeah, I,
just sounding
you know,
okay with
we
this?
should be able to do something, you know, at
Understand.
a lesser rate, but move
And
forward.
it creates a relationship, et cetera, so that type of thing. So, everybody understand where I'm going?
Yes, but I wanna ask Phil if he has indigestion.
Well, the problem is, what I'm hearing from Pat is that if we wait, we start to lose these things in our ability to
Yeah, I don't
cycle.
care if it's
is
residential
limited.
real estate or et cetera, you reach a point in time in this type of situation where you realize that the market is also does this type of things, all right? And you're always trying to bet the peak, and you have this point as it goes here that you want to try to. And what, in this particular case especially, to try to avoid that agita and the fact that we've had these stale years and we now are finally seeing something that's opened up kind of a door, walk through that doggone door
Make
and
hay while
get
the
to the
sun shines, we
backside
got
of
you.
it before,
Yes, sir.
because we all know it's coming again.
Well, and then during this 9 years, are we sure that it's gonna be good every year? I'm sure that it's probably not gonna
It
be
is
good
not
every
going to
year.
be.
So,
Yeah, it's 39 years for me in October, so. I'm not even
37 for
kidding.
me in
There you go.
January, so,
Okay.
yes, sir.
That's my
What a
recommendation.
bunch of youngsters.
You got it. What are you talking about? He's a young man, for crying out loud.
Hold on, I'm sorry, April, did you wanna?
Well, I just wanted to say, are we suggesting a revision up to a certain percentage and give him some latitude to work? And are you considering
The answer is
approving
yes.
of this contingent upon PPAC approving it, and then we wouldn't have to
Of course
be
it is.
bringing it back?
Of course, sure, it's contingent on, yes. All I've done
Yeah.
is I've politely suggested a possible course. The person that decides on how to get from point A to point B are those people that directly represent the majority. I'm just somebody that has obviously an interest in it. I'm just giving a suggestion with my experience, et cetera. Okay?
Phil, would you come to the podium and give us your latest thoughts?
Yeah, Phil Measy, representing PPAC at this point. Yeah, I think that Gary's suggestion is a good one. We have a budget workshop coming up on the 26th of April. And if we, what I would like to do is get the full information. You know, I recognize that that's a few days away, but I don't think a few days is gonna be bad. If we can get the full information,
If I were you,
and I would
I'd
like
turn
to
to
get
that
Pat.
handsome man that
And I
just-
would like to get Pat to
There you
come,
go. Get
come to
Pat
the
to come.
meeting,
Pat, you
and,
good?
and,
I'm good with that.
and I
Okay.
think we could address that as part of our budget workshop, because this
There you go.
clearly impacts, you know, our finances. That I think that would be a good way to go.
Okay,
And
may I suggest then that you or
Yeah.
some other representative from PPAC will bring this back to us with your recommendation?
that's correct, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you might wanna have a little bit of private talk with Pat.
Yep.
Make sure that you're telling him some of the things that would help you come to a decision and work together with that, and then
Mhm.
come back on the 5th.
Yeah,
Right,
Sound
our
like a
next
plan?
board meeting is the 5th.
5th, right, okay. We will, you know, get back to you. Hmm?
Yeah, that's great.
You good?
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Pat.
Hey,
Thanks,
Pat, you might wanna give him a business card or two.
Yeah, oh, yeah, okay. I'll go get you one.
Okay, we're postponing that item until, Health Reserve Advisory Committee gets back to us. We're at 5D, approval proposal from Land Architects for Landscape Master Plan. April, will you help us along?
At, I think it was the March 17th board meeting, Bill Pricey came and he presented the two different scenarios we had in the landscape master plan. And at that point in time, there was some confusion, but there wasn't a motion on what we wanted to do, which plan we wanted to actually approve. So Bill is here again, and to answer any questions that you may have, and I believe it was the recommendation of the Landscape Advisory Committee that we wanted to go with the fuller package, the $58,000 package. And I'll let Bill speak and answer any questions.
Thank you. Bill, would you please come to the podium for us?
Ladies and gentlemen, would you like me to just roll through it, or would you guys just like to present me
I
with
need to know
questions?
the difference between the cheap version and the deluxe version.
Were you here at the last meeting? We went through that in great
Let's not be
detail.
snippy.
Well, I didn't mean to be. I did not mean to be. I know it's getting late, but I
Have
did
no
not mean to
greater
be.
fury
I
than me.
was saying that in jest. The full version really is, the difference between the full version and the budgeted version, would you like to kind of give me give you kind of an explanation of how they came about as well? Is that there was at one time when we sat down with then Scott and Al, it was, said, well, this is, the overall master plan, and we came up with an idea of, what would be our professional approach to address gateways, creating a roadway master plan for all the gateway community, and that was one scope of services. And then Scott said, well, we have to look at a limitation of $25,000 for a budget. I said, okay, well, if you want to look at the full version versus what we can do for that budget amounts, that's how it broke down into the two. And we were prepared to go either way. But it was what you could get for that budget amount, or what you could get if we approached this in what we thought was the best appropriate manner to do the entire thing and get the community buy-in. So that's really what you get between the two versions, is a limited factor and a full version.
It's a 135% increase between the two, so to speak. And then you've got public opinion, which takes up this thing that's called time, which a wise person once said is the most valuable thing in the world. Right? Therefore, if you start to get involved in an awful lot of back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, which sometimes we see, how much of that time do you feel is fair within that $58,000 number? So that someone isn't suddenly camping out at your front door and you finally go, wait a minute here. $58,000 is $58,000. I'm not on your beck and call for 24/7 for 6 months.
Right. I'm not sure I completely understand your question, but I'll
trying
try
to be
I'll try to
subtle.
answer it in the best way that I can.
I'm trying to be subtle.
Right. And I think I get the gist of what you're saying. The way I look at that is I answer to and I report to April. That's kind of the way, that's the way I am with this project. However, if there is anybody that has any questions, I would assume they would come either through this board or through April. If anybody wanted to contact me directly through the course of this project, I'm more than willing to
Bad
speak with them on it.
assumption, Phil, bad assumption.
And I know, and all communities are different. You know, I just did a project similar to this down in Estero, and it truly went that way. Nobody really contacted me directly. There were a
Okay.
few people that did, but, you know, if it works that way, and that's kind of the difference between the full version and the budgeted version, is that we have more community buy-in, more workshops, so to speak, and that those are geared more towards having what I'd say is the difference between a presentation, excuse me, and a workshop. And the difference between a presentation and the workshop is, at a presentation, I'm going to go through, this is pretty much what we're thinking, and if you have any comments, we're here to receive them. But a workshop is really more of getting a community buy-in. That's the opportunity for that person that has any interest in what's going on to really present their questions, their comments, and project their opinions.
My last question is there anything in between?
Is there any?
Meaning, between this version at 20,
58.
at 25, and the other one at 58, is there a $40,000 version?
Oh, there could be, yeah, there could be, but
It makes sense.
would it make sense? I mean, if you're asking me to go attack it again and look at another approach for a different amount of money, I
would
mean,
think
as a
man of
professional,
your
I can
skill
always
and
do that.
Dexterity and experience would be able to come up and go, yeah, for $40,000, that'll get you about this. And that would be, I'd expect that. Yeah.
I mean, we could, but I looked at it as, here's what we do based on the budget number it's given us, and
I
here's the
understand.
version we think is the best way to go about it. So if you're asking me, can I trim that to 40 and figure out another budget? Yeah.
Save $19,000, so to speak.
But the question would be, is it gonna give you what you want? And that really,
I don't know
that's,
how many town hall meetings that, but that's a little majority.
Dan?
I'd like to, hear what April has to say about why they came to, do you know why you came to the decision of what are you proposing that we do? The full version or the budgeted version or somewhere in between?
We field on a daily basis a lot of questions from the residents about the landscaping. And at the Landscape Advisory Committee, it was decided that they preferred the more robust package based on the demonstrations of what we were going to have with the presentation media itself, and the kind of the charrette format to the workshops to allow people to participate in what the overall vision of the appearance of the district and the community was going to be. I will tell you that we have put the replanting program on hold, waiting anxiously so we could avoid going out and spending, I believe the budget was approved for like $50,000 for the replanting program. It's currently on hold, so we have bare spots in the community, things that we are not addressing, waiting for this project. So the Landscape Advisory Committee wanted to do this full version, and I am on board. I've talked to Bill. Me and Elle are on board with being actively involved and having pre-project meeting and being involved with the Landscape Advisory Committee so we can see this project through. So what I have proposed to you today is the motion to approve the full version for the $58,000.
And the difference, are you suggesting that the $50,000 that we would have used for actual plantings is where the monies would come to pay for the rest, what's not budgeted?
There's money on hold. We did just dip into it for those washouts. So we've dipped into that almost $17,000. But there is some available budget there, and I believe, and I apologize, but I meant to put that on there, that was where the additional funds would come from. And everything is on hold, so the longer we stall this, he did put together a comprehensive plan as far as outlining those changes for us at a previous meeting, and I apologize because it's already been before you. I did not bring his documentation of those two versions to you again. Perhaps I should have.
What is the time frame if we were to say, go ahead and we'll go with either proposal, what time frame are we looking at to actually from start to finish?
I believe with this program, we had discussed at the March 17th meeting that we would have kind of two phases that is going to stretch over 2 budget years. So that first 25,000 was actually going to be in this budget year, and the remainder of it would actually, because we've broadened and made it a more robust program, that we're actually going to roll across another fiscal year and utilize budget in that year as well for the remainder of the project. And if I understand correctly, that this is going to be an architectural plan that's going to design, it's not going to include any planting. We still have to go back and that's additional funds to go in and replant. So the longer we stall on these decisions, we just keep backing up everything unless we want to just go ahead and put some plants out there and replant now, because we're looking at, I believe, approximately an 18-month project just for this architectural master plan.
May I?
Mm-hmm.
If we, I'm backing up. I remember with some detail the arguments that we had at budget time that resulted in a $25,000 budget for this item. And I'm a little hesitant to just willy-nilly exceed that. However, based on what you just said, if we approve the full 58, can we understand that we're gonna expend no more than 25 out of this year's budget?
Yes.
And the balance will be presumably out of the fiscal 17
Yes, and
budget?
that's how we structured it, and that was the premise of the conversation, to go back and consider, instead of foregoing and not getting bringing the vision that we wanted for the community into fruition, that we could extend the project and actually implement the full robust program with the active workshops because the reality is we're probably going to go into another budget year anyway. And so yes, that was an integral part of that conversation.
Are board members ready to make a motion based on spending no more than 25,000 out of the current year's budget?
Well, I understand what Gary was saying in terms of there's the full budget, there's the budget, version, and then there's something in between. And I do think that some of this is not totally needed. I don't know how we go about, I think we need to look at it and come up with something that is, in between. I'd really like to see that, because some of this is overkill, I think. It's not really needed.
Okay, I'm just learning the structure of and that's fine. He's already agreed that he could do that, but trying to understand the process and so other words, what the Landscape Advisory Committee is recommending, we want to take it back to the Landscape Advisory Committee and rework it.
I would like that. I don't know, how you guys feel, or I don't know if it's something that can be done with staff.
Well, if we would, based on what you just said,
There you go.
if we'd approve the I'm sorry?
No, I think her last phrase was
Yeah.
correct.
I think it should be something that
There
can be
you
done
go.
with staff. You guys kind of know what the vision is and what we're looking for, and you can email the board members back and forth, and we can give you our opinions.
No.
That's when you end up having a sunshine law issue.
The attorney just awakened.
Oh, no, it jumped out of my seat. I was awake.
Bill, Bill, how long will it take you to come up with a
You're on a
revised,
good track, kiddo. You're doing good. I think that there needs to be decisions, and sooner or later, if we keep this thing going for 2 years, imagine how long this is gonna stretch, and nothing against you. Staying within even the $58,000, having seen what I've seen in 8 years, it's never gonna happen. And all we'll do is keep stretching this thing and stretching this thing and stretching it. And the key right now is if there's that much concern regarding the condition, lead follower, get out of the way, get it done, bang.
Yeah.
So go do it. So, great suggestion.
Or maybe we can just give a higher budget and staff, they could work something out within that budget.
And put April responsible, she's an accountant. Put her responsible for making sure that $40,000 number, if that's the number, becomes absolutely financially wise, and go get it done.
Are you happy?
Okay, so to understand, are you revising the motion that you're going to approve us to move forward with the architectural design at a $40,000 budget, and we're not taking into consideration the landscape advisory committee? It's only that staff is going to.
Landscape Advisory Committee is an advisory committee. The decision is made by us.
Okay, I just want to be sure that that's the direction that you're giving me.
Pam, will you state the motion that you're convenient or comfortable with?
Okay, my motion is if we can go with the approving for the $40,000 budget to make changes. Okay, and of course, you've already, confirmed with the landscaping committee, so this stuff, some of this stuff is already approved. So you can just do whatever we can get done within that $45,000.
40, careful now,
40, I'm
careful.
sorry. I like to spend money. $40,000 budget.
So for the reduction, are we suggesting a reduction in the workshops? Are we suggesting a reduction in the geography? We're not going to include as.
I would say the
I would
workshops.
say the workshops.
Absolutely.
Why is-
Two workshops in there.
But if you're just looking at just taking the workshops out, there's a breakdown here. The Exhibit C is a breakdown of cost. If you remove 2 workshops, you haven't removed
No.
a lot of money.
Okay, well, we're not.
The second workshop is $1,000 and the third workshop is $2,000, so that's $3,000. That's not
18.
That's not anywhere close to what you're asking them to remove, so.
On the budget version, there are 2 workshops included, am I correct?
They're of limited time, and they're of limited context of what's being presented at them as well.
And so on the budget version, we're not doing the West Links. I guess what we have to figure out is what is more important. We're not doing West Links Boulevard medians.
Yeah, as a professional, the question I would ask is what's more important to you? Is it the budget amount or the scope of work? Because I mean, that's what would help me focus on. If you're saying we only want to spend $40,000, I would still need to know what your priorities are and what your expectations of the end product is to define a scope for $40,000. And that's kind of what, when I met with then Scott and Al and with the Landscape Advisory Committee, they gave me what they felt was their expectations of what this master plan entailed. Therefore, as a professional, that's what we put together as a scope and come up with a fee. And I can tell you, my initial take on this had it well into the $80,000, and I didn't think that was even gonna be digestible here, so I reconceived it and drove it down to 58 based on those expectations. So I mean, if you're just telling me that 40,000 is what you want, I would still need to know what is your expectations for $40,000.
To me, I think with what we're looking at, the landscaping for Gateway is a huge project, and it's gonna be probably one of the most important projects that we take on because of the visual aspect of it. We want the community to have a nice look, for lack of a better term. this is, you know, the bang for the buck kind of thing. And we're stretching this project over 2 budget years. So we know we've got $25,000 to start. That's gonna take us into October 1st. And then we just make sure we've budgeted the rest of the amount. I think this project is going to be very important to the residents of Gateway. And I don't wanna it to end up being scaled down or cut and not end up being what we envision or what we want for the community. So I'm willing to, since it's extending through 2 years, go with the full project that the Landscape Advisory Committee suggested.
The 58.
Yes.
Well, then that will stretch it out to 2 years.
It would be anyway, correct? I mean,
We're
even if we-
anticipating about 18 months. It could go 24, but I can't imagine it. Would probably not less than 18 and not more than 24.
Even if we went with the scaled down version, are we talking about it extending beyond October 1st?
At this point in time, yes.
So it's
So
our,
so in the meantime, we're not doing anything in terms of the planning. What happens with the money that we want to use for plantings?
Well, right now, because it's on hold, it's been targeted for other things. I mean, so the idea is that I believe in the budget was the first 25,000. The budget was constraining the project because we were only looking within this fiscal year. But the reality of the scope of the project is we're going to be beyond. And so what was presented was the original kind of concept and vision that we would make a full robust program and design for the landscaping of the entire roadway system. And I will tell you that Elle and I just recently discussed a document that was designed in 2008. It was kind of a master plan. And I want to vet it to you guys and
I
reshare.
remember that.
Reshare in it because it actually had some dollar figures attached and some pictures and some visionary stuff, and it was fairly nice. And I will tell you, one of the things in that report in 2008 was to have a landscaping master design done. And here we are, standing here in 2016, still discussing how we're going to get a master plan for our landscape design.
Started.
So I would like to make a motion to go ahead and accept this at the full version.
I still wanted to find out, in the meantime, the plantings, the money that so now we're gonna hold that off for 2 years, or?
We should get a second and then discuss it.
Okay.
There's a motion.
There is a motion, and I will second.
Okay.
Now, let's discuss.
So are we gonna hold that portion off for 2 years, the plantings?
Well, I think it was, and I'm not sure if it was directed to staff, I wasn't here, but because this design plan came into, fruition, that I think there was hesitation, definitely on staff side, to go out and plant plants that could ultimately be ripped up in the near future with a redesign. Or if we were going to mold those plants into the current design of what Bill is preparing. But I would think that perhaps that is something that we could probably discuss, that it's gonna be part of this.
I think you could probably work that into the process and then figure out a way to execute it without waiting that long.
I would really like that, because I think it's a big drag in this community. It's starting to look.
We've already addressed the stumps. The stumps are being taken out and ground down if they haven't already, because that was something that we were supposed to follow up with the contractor, so they should have been out this week, grinding down some of the stumps. And then I know there's, what we can do is we can, I know we're planning, staff and I are planning a ride-along to go through the neighborhood, and what we can do is create a hit list when we do that ride-along and see if we can't find some, you know, essential areas that do need some replanting, you know, because we're probably still a couple years out for replanting.
Absolutely.
Before you actually
relative-
starting to put screw
Right.
in the ground, yeah.
Right, so,
Yeah.
and if that is, if that's what the board supports, then that's what we can do.
I think we should, you know, do something.
Okay.
It's not looking good.
That's right, we have a motion and a second on the floor to accept the recommendation that's before us for the full amount, which would, use up the $25,000 budget in this fiscal 16 year and $33,000 in the fiscal 17 year, and we'll get this darn thing going. And if we find out that there's some things that Bill has in his budget that we don't need as we go along, we'll understand that Bill in April won't spend that money for it. If you haven't,
It's a defined task with an associated fee, and if it's not necessary, it doesn't have to be executed.
are you okay?
Yeah.
You okay?
What's taking 2 years? Is it the fact that it
The
takes
soup
you,
and nuts
is it the fact that it takes you 2 years to plan? Or is it the fact of all of these different workshops? Is it the combination thereof? What takes 2 years?
I would define that as the design process, where you're going back from, we're starting at programming, and then we're figuring out what the goals and objectives are, what the opportunities and constraints are based on the existing conditions, and then we're getting into schematic conceptuals, design development, and then into final master planning. And the final master planning is more your polished graphics, so lay people can understand what it's the whole idea of getting everybody on the same page, and that's the process of a master plan. That course of time area takes at least about 18 months.
Okay,
to
here's my
conduct.
concern, one of my concerns, a very definite concern. How many people are on the landscape committee right now? How many people?
On the committee?
How many
What's the-
people?
Six.
Five.
How many, I
Thank
thought
you.
that with the landscape committee that there were problems
Seven.
with having people showing up at the meetings. Is that true?
Five.
There are 5
Is
people.
that
Five.
true?
There are 5 people on the committee.
Okay, there's a number of people on the committee, and this lovely young lady has come to us at least 2, if not 3 times, telling that she's the one that gets tasked with showing up here for the landscape committee, and she's essentially, and this is supporting you, she's a committee of 1, per se. She's the reliable one. So, what I'm trying to say is,
And I have joined the landscape committee.
thank God.
My first meeting is April 24th.
First meeting, okay, so you'll be a committee of 2 in the future. Do you see what I'm kind of saying? We need to also have that then cooperative effort between these 2 fabulous young ladies to keep this thing moving and not make it something that so many people start dragging this on so that it becomes, we have to wait for X, Y, and Z to give their input. That's baloney. That falls under the Grover Cleveland lead follower, get out of the way.
We're not doing a very good job this afternoon, Gary.
In conjunction with throwing $58,000, we need to know that we're putting $58,000 and that we have a coalition with these 2 ladies that we're gonna get this thing done, rather than putting April on the spot, because they're gonna be the ones giving her the input, should be the ones talking about something that happened in 2008. So if this is a 2-year plan, it's more than the $58,000, which is what I was trying to bring about. It's the whole scope of this plan, and the fact that we need to finally accomplish something in the proper order and within the proper time.
We're gonna get started as soon as we call for a vote on the motion and the
Thank you.
second. Are you ready to vote?
Thank you. Yep.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Gary, I don't hear.
I'm sorry, I was drinking. Yes.
4-0. Thank you very much.
What's the floor?
Yeah.
I'll follow up with you this week.
5E is talking about a proposal for an alpha survey for the road turnover. April, are you gonna talk to us about this?
I did prepare the summary. And this is basically relative to the road project and another item that we found out when we sat down with the county attorney's office and got on board with all the county staff. And if you have any specific questions regarding the survey, I'm going to defer those to Tyler because he knows the details of what we have to do for this project and why this is necessary.
Thank you. Tyler, do you have anything to add?
No, sir, other than if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
May I have a motion to approve the recommendation?
Second.
And a motion and a second?
Tyler, is this like to create, I'm sorry.
Sorry about
I'm
that.
sorry. Is this so to create like as-built for the county? Is that what this is?
Yes, ma'am. So all the improvements that have taken place from the roadway project, this is a survey of those improvements and an overall survey of the parcels to be turned over to the county. So, yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're gonna give them more than we got, right?
Exactly.
Yes, sir, you are.
Second,
All right, that motion,
yes.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
4-0, thank you very much. Approve the Tetra Tech task authorization for the amended engineers report.
Okay, again, I brought this to you. This is amending Tetra Tech's contract, their agreement, and allowing an increased amount in there to cover the engineering report update that is needed for this the report that's needed so we can go to bond council and get the projects approved for the remainder of the proceeds. And I do have a correction. I had put in here that the proceeds are the balance of the 2003 proceeds, but I wasn't paying attention that those was refunded in 2013. So the balance is actually from the 2013 proceeds.
Right, this is the telecom construction money that's still about
Yes.
$1.2 million and da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
And you and Danny and all, and thank you, Nancy, have been working on this. I only have one question is, the engineer and the attorney and all the fees that are going to accumulate doing this, where is this gonna be charged? Where's the accountant in the room?
I would imagine it's just.
I mean, where's the accountant that's gonna say, take it from these proceeds?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the bill, you're talking about this particular task order or in general? Is your question
Well,
related
let's-
to?
Let's start with the exact question. Danny's firm is gonna charge us $7,000.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that the attorney is gonna have some invoices, for work that he's done, and there may be others, lurking that I don't even know about, but what's gonna be the charge on us? Do we charge this to the construction account?
That would be my first option, yes. I don't see why not.
That, well, and subject to bond council having a different opinion, it's
Right.
part of the project, I believe we can charge it
Yes.
to that.
You keep talking about bond counsel, and you haven't ever answered my question. Who is the bond counsel?
We would recommend David Lapidus, that's part of our conversation later on in the board meeting. He's of counsel with Squire, Sanders, and Dempsey.
Wouldn't it actually be the trustee that'd be approving that requisition?
The requisition, but it's always helpful to have an opinion from the bond council, that the funding is appropriate.
Okay, so it's gonna be charged to the construction account unless some unnamed individual.
But the trustee says no, yes.
Says no.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. May I have a motion to approve the Tetra Tech authorization?
That was, somebody said $7,000,
I thought
rounding
that-
down?
I thought that's what it was. $7,210.
It's an April
I
discount.
thought I heard 7, Bill.
It's an April discount.
Having fun with me again. Are you
No,
gonna-
I'm having fun with Tyler. He's the one that's laughing like me.
Are you
Go
gonna,
ahead.
you gonna make the motion?
No, I'll let you do that.
All right, I'll moved. May I have a second? Any further conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Stony Brook Security Services Agreement, G.
Mr. Guy, that one was pulled.
That one is pulled.
It wasn't ready.
And it will be ready at the next meeting, and I've had a conversation with Joe McCulca, and the concept would still have it effective as of April 1st, which was the date of the original agreement.
All right. What about the utilities expenditure for the lift station pumps?
I'm back. So I've been working with Terry, and we've been trying to catch up with staff and some of the backlogged projects that we've had going and trying to get rolling. And they have been working on a lift station pump inventory, and I apologize, but I'm not sure exactly what conversations were brought to you historically. But one of their issues that they're having with on the utility side is, you know, having to a lift station being down, having to pull a pump out, having to take it over to the shop, have it fixed, and then having to bring it back. So one of the things that we can do is they want to run a small inventory of pumps. So our staff can quickly change those out, get that lift station back up and running. It puts less stress on the overall system, and it will probably be, you know, then we don't have that much of a delay in the repair of that particular lift station. And then the one that goes into the shop to get repaired will be the one sitting in inventory, and then we're constantly rotating out these pumps when they go down.
May I have a motion for approval?
How about a question?
Please ask your question.
These are relatively standard pumps. Why can't we get rebuilds to start the inventory?
Some of them are, and so the first one is a new pump, and on the proposals, what I provided to you is a rebuild is $4,477. A brand new pump is only $5,459. So based on the age of some of these pumps, we're trying to, you know, start fresh, and it just makes more sense to go ahead and buy the new one. So we've got 3 new pumps, and we've got one is a repair, and I did put a 10% contingency in here just in case on that repair if something else creeps up. Not sure exactly.
So for the future audiences, this has now been made public, why we're going for new rather than starting with rebuilds. Okay.
On the ones that are new, they've been being rebuilt for some time, is the way that I understand it, that they're old pumps.
He's happy.
Oh.
Stick with me, April.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
I think Mr. Newbauer said,
Affirmative vote.
I think he said he's creating the record for positive perspective. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Cute.
Gary, you want to make this motion?
Oh, go right ahead. Go on.
Pam, will you help me out?
I make a motion to accept this,
Proposal.
proposal for $26,000.
Second.
I should have asked this earlier. Is this a charge against 01 or 400?
No, this will be 400. 400. The 400 account is the enterprise fund. This is all utility stuff.
I missed that. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're through with discussing items. Staff reports, says District Council on the Pelican Preserve Bond Fund. I don't know how much more you can
Just
tell
real
us.
briefly, just authorizing District Council, District Manager, and myself to prepare task authorizations for the work associated with it, so we have a definite agreements in place to do the work necessary for this amended engineer's report and utilization of the funds, because it's outside the scope of the normal workload. And we bring it back to the next board meeting.
Is that it?
Yes, sir. Then I don't know if Nancy Hall has anything to add to it. It's been very helpful working with the group. We've had some very good conference calls and conversations.
I'll make that motion.
Yes, sir, please.
And you're,
I just said it.
I'll second.
Don't let me rewind. I'll make that motion.
and Margaret has seconded it.
Accept this
Uh,
proposal.
I don't think we're gonna have any more conversation on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0. Thank you very
Who
much. Is that
seconded
it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, honey. District engineer.
For the record, Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech. I think we have one item on here, and that's simply an update on the SRF process and where we go from here. Two things to point out on this update. One is, the first bullet, I think it is, we have sent a draft out for staff. The board will receive a link tomorrow that will have a location where you can download the facilities plan. It's too large to email, and so that'll be emailed out to the board members so you can see that. That's a draft. So that is we're gonna set for the public hearing on the 19th, and that'll be advertised. So we have between now and the 19th to review it, make changes, and that sort of thing. So it's keep in mind the audience of the facilities plan is DEP. It follows their formatting. It's a fairly simple document, but we try to make it as thorough and as detailed as possible about what we're doing. We have maps showing the various lakes and a schedule and that sort of thing. So you'll see that. You'll see Stephen's item in there. And one item on here that is incorrect is on the second page of the memorandum. I'm not sure which page it is of the 149. The third bullet, last sentence says the process, this is about the pre-qualification, is estimated to take 60 days. That part's correct. When I prepared this, I put that as June 1st, and that should actually be July 1st is when we're anticipating to be complete with the process for the pre-qualification. So other than that, if anybody has any questions, and we can certainly discuss this at the first meeting in May, as the public hearing will be on the 19th. We'd like to air out as much of this as possible. So if everyone can review the draft before then, and we can maybe have that as a discussion item as well.
When do we need to put out the announcement for the public meeting?
Of this public hearing?
Yeah.
30 days, is it?
Yes.
28 or 30 days, but you could set the public hearing now, and we'll just make sure it's
That's why I'm
advertised
asking the
appropriately.
question.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
if we get a motion to set a public hearing for May 19th for public comment, for acceptance of the stormwater facilities plan.
I thought you said we need 30 days.
Isn't
Or,
it
I'm,
21st?
May 29th,
Well, May 19th
or
would
May
be the,
19th, yeah.
yes,
Right, we need 28.
Yeah.
it'd be 28
Can
days.
we make it?
No, that's when we
Well,
needed
this
it.
is-
Tony?
this-
No, it's not gonna be
Yeah.
3 days, I
This
mean,
is
if
the
that's a requirement.
21st.
I don't know that there's a requirement of DEP for 30 days.
Right.
So
Okay, 'cause I thought, I'm
No.
not familiar with the SRF process, so do you know what the time frame is?
we can verify. It's not, in their eyes, they're not actually considering this a public hearing. They call it a public participation meeting. So all they care about is that they get a copy of the advertisement. So in my opinion, however you would normally
Our normal
advertise
advertising
for.
process, we can, 10 days ahead of time.
Yeah.
Plenty of time,
Yeah.
10 days is fine.
unless they have a specific time frame.
We'll verify that tomorrow, but and I'll report to you, but unless you hear otherwise, that's been my experience.
And
We'll
you have a
verify.
template for the form of the advertisement, Danny, that you've utilized before, or that,
Yeah, we can provide that.
or get something from DEP, so you can know that?
Yeah, we have
Okay.
that.
Great.
Are you looking for a motion to authorize a advertisement for a public hearing for stormwater facilities update hearing on May 19th?
Yes, sir.
May I have a motion?
You just made it, didn't you?
Well, I
I'll
asked,
second it.
no, I asked for one. Will you please make the motion?
So moved.
May I have a second? Pam said, okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0.
And that's all I have, and if I may be excused, I have a function at 7.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
For you, and that is, now that the lake levels have gone down quite a bit, are we back on schedule to finish the projects we had already started?
We have designed for the, for the next lakes. We're in the process of that, so I don't think you have enough time. I'm gonna say no. You're not on schedule to do anything this dry season. The reason is we need to go through the pre-qualification process. So that pre-qualification process won't be until July, and I don't think that there's money in the current budget. So you'll be on schedule for.
No, I was thinking of the lakes that were kind of in limbo. We were in process.
Oh, yes, and actually 104, they began today, I think. So yes, definitely.
That was what I wanted to hear.
Lake 104, we actually met the contractor out there this morning. They've mobilized out there, and they'll be beginning hard work next week. So,
Thank
yes.
you.
Thank you. Are you, like, everybody, may Danny leave?
Bye, Danny.
Bye, Danny. District manager?
You've got a copy of the audit, was in the packet. You've got a hard copy that was on the table today. Stephen's here, who can answer any specific questions, but it is a good, clean audit and nothing to be concerned about.
I have one question. On page 40 of the audit report,
That's page 199 of the agenda.
yes. At the bottom, it's talking, under the heading Business Type Activities Revenue Bonds.
Yes.
Approximately in 6 series, annual. I'm in the wrong place. It's up a little bit. It's summary of significant bond resolution terms and covenant on the same page. The bonds are subject to mandatory redemption as part of da-da-da. You with me?
Yes.
It said, oh, heck, that's not the right place either. Anyway, there was a spot in this report that talked about the financing that we did for the water meter project.
Oh, I think that's the next page.
And it said that this was a refunding of an earlier,
Yeah, under the note payable.
well, it was a, I thought they put in the same thing twice. It was an error. It was on page 168 that I was looking at. Excuse me. Yeah, here it is. On page 168 of the agenda.
Oh, maybe, yeah, I think it's on, yeah.
I'm there.
You with me?
Yes.
Under debt management, governmental activity debts include the following. In November, the bonds were issued to pay and redeem outstanding shares. That's all okay, I think. And then under business type activities, in January, the district asked us $1,000,006. So these bonds were issued to pay and redeem the outstanding series.
Correct.
Do you think that's correct?
Yeah, there's two bonds in the enterprise fund. Well, shouldn't call them bonds. One bond and then one note. The note was the second one is your water meter program, and then this bond that they're talking about is the refunding of an older one.
Okay, thank you very much.
But I mean, but, Mr. Chairman, possibly you're referring to, and there was a discussion, with regards to, on page 200, where you're gonna do long-term debt and the note payable. Maybe it was because they talked about significant bond resolution terms and covenants, Stephen, was that referencing the prior bond, the million?
I mean, they're calling it a bond there. It's, that section is referring to the note payable.
Okay, maybe that's
That might be
possible.
what caused it. They're just calling, it basically, it's saying, it's explaining the covenants, which the big piece of that is that, you know, you have to have 110% of the debt service requirements has got to be funneling through, to cover it, and it's just showing that you have that amount.
But I think it really was a note resolution, wasn't it? I mean, on they had to do
Yeah, it's really more of a note. Sometimes they call it, they're interchangeable, but you're right,
I
yeah.
think possibly for clarification, we may want to ask the auditors to make sure there's, in this case, there is a difference between the note and the bond.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Well,
especially
would
the,
somebody please for the public, especially since the summary version of the difference between a note and a bond?
Both of them are debt. It's
yeah,
just a
I
matter
mean,
of-
that's, yeah, I mean, both of them are debt. I mean, again, for me, from the financial perspective, it's how, you know, how it's secured. The bond indenture has a whole series of indentures. It's two different instruments, but they are both essentially debt for the district. But, you know,
Traditionally, a note had maturity of 5 years or less, and a bond generally 20 years.
right, which was one of our discussions when we went to get this, was why we couldn't really do a bond, and it didn't make sense because of the terms.
Yeah, because if we were to do a long-term bond longer than 5 years, we'd have to go through a bond validation, when the cost of
Yeah.
issuance would have not been worth the value.
Oh, yeah, and that's, you know, the bottom line is the cost of bonds are a lot more than notes
See?
when you come
So
to,
everybody in the public knew all that, but
Yeah.
now they know it again.
All right,
Well,
are there any other questions about the audit report, or may I have a motion to accept?
And authorize the chair to sign the AFR, the
And sign and authorize the chair to sign the
annual financial report.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Go ahead.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
4-0, thank you very much.
just one housekeeping item. Just kind of a follow-up to a question. The current utility rates, the last time there's an increase is 2018. So, in other words,
Pardon me, 2018?
there was a question as to when do the utility rate increases end? Because every year on the first
The
day.
increases end, now I
Yeah.
got you.
Okay.
So just it was kind of a housekeeping item as we move forward. It's January 1 of 2018 is the last set.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Was it on the same thing?
Well, it's on the audit opinion letter, just one point of clarification I forgot to mention. Under the contingencies, note L on page 202, right now, the party is not presently party to any litigation. So I'll give it to the auditor to send a revised audit opinion letter so we can correct that. All the litigation issues have been resolved. We're not party to any litigation at the present time.
As of the time of this, okay, well, we can talk with them about that because this
You're
is,
talking about K or L?
L,
okay, understand.
We just said that even that they're resolved.
Prior to the end of the
they're
fiscal
not-
year.
They're not gonna have a material effect on the statement.
right, but I think it's just important to indicate there's no pending litigation, you know, but I'll clarify that with the auditor. I mean, I think we need to clarify and correct that.
Okay.
Everybody happy?
The end of September, wasn't it after, like, October or November that?
Well, again, that's a clarification. Sometimes they'll put in after the close of the fiscal year, that matter was resolved, and typically there'll be a note clarifying that. I'll make sure we get with the auditor to
Okay.
have that.
I've got a couple housekeeping items.
Go ahead.
Okay, utility manager, we're down to 6 right now. The candidates are fairly strong on paper right now. The committee, which is Danny, Tyler, April, myself, as soon as we get the references, we'll be checking references and before we actually identify who we're going to obtain or interview. We had a problem with at least one and possibly another, and that is on salary. And I've always said that we're probably looking at about 60. Now, Yvonne was getting 72. And I think if you're willing to go up to that, I think we can retain a couple of the candidates. But, you know, one I talked to today that is willing to take less money, but not maybe that much, but he's getting 104 right now.
Whoa.
And there's no way that we're gonna pay him that, but he would like to, you know, look at the position pretty strongly. He's managing a system now with 36 employees, and he's pretty impressive, but.
First question you gotta ask is why would somebody take that big of a pay cut?
Because he's working in the Keys, and the cost of living is pretty high. So, and his family wants to get to an area where they have malls and things like that. So,
But you've asked all those questions. What do you need from us?
I'd like some indication that 70 or 72 would be an acceptable salary range. Nothing would go at right away, but.
This organization needs the best
Okay.
staff that we can hire.
You got it.
The city of Fort Myers just hired their city manager at 192 plus. I mean, things are going
Sure.
crazy from where they were when I was working, but we've gotta have capable, terrific staff, or we're never gonna make the headway we can. I think you've got the authorization from me unless we hear a complaint.
Okay. Also personnel, today we lost the utility billing manager, so we'll start that process right away.
We did?
Yep. So. Talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. Last thing, just a reminder, on the 28th, we've got the workshop, which is next Thursday at 10 o'clock
In this room.
in this room.
Are you finished?
Yeah, I am finished, sir. Unless you want to jump right on the Rambus thing right now.
That's what I was just showing him.
Actually, and I forwarded it to you while we were sitting here. All of the reports, which is a requirement of the contract, was sent to Mr. Senior. Diane printed them off, and this is all of them. We didn't make copies for everyone. Anyone wants these, you can have them. This is 9 reports, and I've sent them to you electronically just a little while ago, so you'll have them when you get home.
A better explanation
July
is why didn't we get them before
Only one person received them.
and didn't share with the rest?
Now, and when Cal forwarded it, it has an explanation saying concerns about the sunshine law, but forwarding a report by a third party would not be a sunshine law issue,
No.
so that was,
Moreover, it could have gone to
yeah.
management and that could have been
Sure.
disseminated that way.
So, I don't know what you want to do with that, but I will tell you that, look, and Tony
Read the
might have
last
another.
line
Yeah,
of the contract, it pretty well sums up your,
right, that you, it goes to July 1, before you have the right to terminate the
It's
contract.
a one-year the 24,000 is predicated upon 1 year, but it's just payable over $2,000 a month.
So,
I have a motion to terminate this contract effective July 1st, 16.
Motion.
I have a motion. May I have a second?
Oh, my God, Pam should second her first. She just leapt at it for crying out loud. Margaret, I'm sure, is waiting to do that.
I'm thinking,
Oh, God.
because
You get coffee?
my concern still is that updates may have not made it to this office. And I think we should at least ask them for an update.
I think
yeah, you
he
have
sent
that. I
us a-
sent it to you
He just
about
said
a
you
half
got
hour
them.
ago.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I did miss that.
And if you want them in hard copy, there you go.
It appears they may be watching the board meeting, based upon the
I
email.
think they were,
Yeah,
because.
the quote
you know,
was, "I see
Diane
from your
came in
board
and
meeting,
said
you
that
all
they
did
were
not
on the
receive
phone."
copies of our legislative reports."
Hardly.
Okay, you have a motion, is there a
The
second?
motion's gonna
Respond back
die
to
for
them
lack of a
next.
second, I'm afraid.
No, I'll second it.
You will second it, all
By
right.
God, yeah.
We have a motion and a second. We'll spend 24,000 and gotten nothing.
Oh, we've got reams of paper there.
I stand corrected.
The only question I'd have is, they still might work hard for you, but, you're gonna have to pay them to July anyhow.
We're paying, we're paying for results.
Yeah,
not
I
hard.
mean, you can
We've
terminate
got-
them in June just as easy as you can right now.
If we do it now, then we don't have to worry
Well,
about it.
it doesn't terminate till July,
Right.
so we're not terminating them.
Well, maybe on
made it
the other
effective.
hand, rather than looking at this that way, Cal,
Mhm.
possibly if they're watching this, and Tony says that they are,
It might be based upon the email.
do yourself a favor and get back to us and tell us why we should rescind the termination.
That's
There you go.
true. There you go.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4-0.
Maybe you should specify publicly where you want them to send the reports from now on.
I talked to him on the phone and told him to send them to me. Or to Diane, I'm sorry.
I think Pam should make another motion.
want this
Motion
back
to
or
mailing
may I have
You
address.
can have it.
Do you
Save
have
you some ink.
any supervisor comments?
Yeah, there's, once again, April is innocent of this one.
You
But,
don't- she doesn't
but
have
a
to-
but a bit of information, 'cause keep asking for more or that you weren't aware. Our landscaping company that we pay an awful lot of money to,
800 and some pounds.
there you go, continually leaves huge ruts along the side of Griffin Drive at the curb. And those huge ruts, they're driving their equipment, they leave them, and each time that they come to try to get the new contract, they promise us that when they make those ruts, they will repair those ruts, and they never do, until somebody makes a phone call. So maybe it'd be a good phone call, because they probably don't know you yet, and how tenacious you will be from now on.
We're currently, staff has a meeting scheduled to review some of the mainscape and the buildings and the out-of-scope stuff. And I'm sure that from that, we'll be pulling the manager in to discuss some issues, and I will bring that up.
Okay, and the other thing is as far as the ends of our islands and that type of thing that been on hold as far as plantings are concerned, two comments. One of the local developers that we had a problem with some of the issues with the lake bank, silt control, et cetera, and then they bought it from, they're prolific enough that they're putting their signs there. So we're getting now this proliferation of new homes coming in the areas where we don't have flowers. So maybe staff also should kind of every so often when they're cruising around, they would let, pick up those signs, because they're right in the middle of the area that our residents are paying $800,000 for some portion thereof. And we're not inviting all of that stuff, if you would, maybe. Okay?
Are you finished?
There was one other thing I had, and I'm having a
I'll come
senior.
back- I'll come back
I'm
to
having
it.
a senior moment, I'm sorry.
I'll come back. Margaret, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Actually, it's-
All right, Gary?
That's all right. It's all Tony's fault, he just got my mind.
I'm sorry, I was
in
just-
direction. But he's absolutely correct, and I do know the third thing now. That area is actually WCI's responsibility. Here's my,
Wait.
when you're heading home tonight, you'll see it, when you make the curve and head through the, there was a thing that we had some folk that sent us about temporary signs that were up in a danger condition over there. And am I correct, and I'm asking you guys, the area that was mentioned where signs have suddenly disappeared about the correct direction on the signage, and apparently people were driving the wrong way down the street because of a lack of signs that had been there, but now they're mysteriously missing. Is that in the area that's the responsibility of WCI, or is it in an area that's the responsibility of us?
What area specifically are we talking about?
He left. Anybody out in the audience know what I'm talking?
Is that over in the, on like Commerce
Yes,
Lakes?
yes.
Yes, and
Somewhere over there.
yeah, and so that's in the road
Exiting
mark-
onto Daniels Parkway was the statement, or
Yeah,
getting out of
and-
there?
And they did correct them, and what I've been doing, there's still some signage issues there, the road sign project started this week. So there should be some corrective action just for the signage that hasn't been there. I know they corrected the paint on the road, which was creating a problem. And this week, I believe the sign project takes like 3 or 4 weeks they have scheduled. So we should see some resolve on, for
Is
there.
there any way you
But as-
might communicate a prioritization of that?
Yeah, and as residents have been calling in and pointing these things out to me, I'm compiling those things, so when we go do the walkthrough, I'm gonna address those specific issues that the residents are seeing and reporting to us.
Because I know when I drove here, I saw them right in that area where the new condos are gonna go, and they were working right there. So possibly a phone call or something might get them to scoot to that area before we have some poor soul innocently or whatever make a mistake and we
We'll
have
check
an
on it
incident.
tomorrow.
Are you finished? Yeah.
I just have,
Please.
I do have one thing, there is a utility road that runs from Gateway through Hampton Park, and it goes all the way to Griffin. On Griffin, there is a gate, but on Gateway, there is not a gate. And I had spoken to Elle about it, and she never got back to me as to who's responsible for putting a gate there. Cause you can just come right off of Griffin Road and go right into, Hampton Park.
Or Gateway Boulevard,
Yeah, I love Gateway Boulevard.
because that utility road is behind your gate.
Right.
So wouldn't that be WCI?
No, actually, the road, it was a dirt road, and then it was paved by the utility company.
FPL.
Yes,
Oh, are we talking about the FPL easement?
yes.
Okay, the FPL easements, WCI has committed, it's probably been a month or so ago that they were going to have both entrances blocked and gated off within a couple of months, and I put that on my calendar to follow up with them, because several residents have complained about, unauthorized traffic using that area. So I do have that on my calendar at that 2-month mark to follow up with them to make sure that it's done.
Okay, when's the 2-month?
I'd have to look on my calendar. It's probably getting close, sometime next month, I think.
All right, thank you.
Are we finished?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Really, the kind of Hampton Park.
What's that?
Now I need to save
Griffin.
People like